In January 2025, just ahead of Donald Trump's inauguration, China made an unexpected move that shocked the international community, particularly the United States. The Chinese government issued an unexpected export ban, a move that not only heightened tensions between the two economic superpowers, but also sent a clear message to the incoming Trump administration, which had vowed to take a tough stance on Beijing. This bold decision quickly garnered attention worldwide, sparking questions about China's strategic intentions and its potential implications for the global economy. Could this lead to a collapse of the U.S. economy in 2025? Let's dive into this issue together in today's video. Before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and activate notifications so you don't miss any updates from Ancient Craft. Now let's begin. The United States had already implemented strict export controls to limit China's access to critical technologies, particularly in the semiconductor and artificial intelligence sectors. These actions included blacklisting major Chinese companies like Huawei and SMIC, expanding foreign direct product rules, and restricting the export of advanced semiconductor manufacturing equipment. The aim of these moves was to protect national security and maintain the U.S.'s technological edge amid growing trade tensions between the two countries. In response, China escalated the situation by imposing its own export bans on strategically important resources for advanced technologies and defense. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce officially announced these measures, framing them as a reaction to the tightening U.S. sanctions. Trade wars are nothing new in international relations, and to fully understand the impact of this latest conflict, it's helpful to look at previous trade disputes, especially the Opium Wars of the 19th century. The Opium Wars, fought between China and Western powers, primarily Britain, were sparked by trade disputes surrounding opium. These wars not only caused immense damage to China's sovereignty, but also shaped the country's relations with Western nations throughout the 19th century. In the 18th century, Chinese goods like porcelain, silk, and tea were highly sought after in Europe, leading to a trade imbalance with large amounts of silver flowing into China. To address this, the British East India Company began exporting opium from India to China, causing widespread addiction and severe social issues. In response, the Qing dynasty banned opium in 1796 and 1800, but smuggling continued. In 1839, Emperor Daoguang appointed Lin Zexu to eradicate the opium trade. Lin confiscated and destroyed large quantities of opium, prompting Britain to retaliate by sending a naval force. With its superior military, Britain defeated the Qing dynasty, leading to the Treaty of Nanking in 1842. This treaty ceded Hong Kong to Britain, opened 5 ports for trade, and forced China to pay war indemnities. The Second Opium War followed in 1856, with France joining Britain against China. This conflict ended with the Treaty of Tianjin in 1858 and the Convention of Peking in 1860. These agreements legalized the opium trade, expanded treaty ports and inland trade routes, and allowed foreign embassies in Beijing. These wars marked the beginning of what is known as China's Century of Humiliation, a period characterized by unequal treaties that greatly benefited Western powers and severely undermined China's sovereignty. A more recent example of trade wars is the U.S. Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930, a protectionist measure introduced during the Great Depression. The act aimed to protect American businesses and farmers by raising tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods to nearly 60%. However, this led to retaliatory tariffs from U.S. trading partners, exacerbating the global economic downturn. Within 2 years, nearly 24 countries imposed their own tariffs, reducing global trade by up to 65% between 1929 and 1934. Canada, one of the U.S.'s largest trading partners, imposed tariffs on 16 goods, affecting around 30% of U.S. exports. As a result, U.S. imports dropped by 66% from $4.4 billion in 1929 to just $1.5 billion in 1933. These historical trade wars reveal that such conflicts are not merely economic. They have profound political and social consequences, shaping international relations for decades or even centuries. The lessons learned from past protectionist policies like the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act continue to resonate today as tensions rise between global superpowers. As the world watches, the question remains: will the U.S. economy survive the coming trade conflict, or are we headed toward another global economic crisis? Exports dropped significantly by 61%, falling from $5.4 billion to $2.1 billion, which worsened unemployment and prolonged the impact of the Great Depression. Most economists today view this tariff policy as a major failure, emphasizing the risks posed by protectionist strategies, such as international retaliation and economic downturns. A more recent example of trade conflict occurred in the early 1960s with the Chicken War, which involved the United States and the European Union, particularly France and West Germany. The dispute began when European nations imposed tariffs and price controls on U.S. chicken to protect their domestic poultry industries. As a result, U.S. chicken exports to Europe sharply decreased. In response, President Lyndon B. Johnson's administration imposed a 25% tariff in 1964 on various European imports, including light trucks, potato starch, dextran, and brandy. This action, known as the chicken tax, significantly impacted European automakers, especially Volkswagen, as light truck imports to the U.S. dropped. While tariffs on other goods were eventually lifted, the 25% tariff on light trucks remains in place today. This policy encouraged foreign automakers to establish manufacturing plants in the U.S. to bypass the tariff, but also reduced global competition in the light truck market. In more recent history, U.S. trade policies targeting China have resulted in complex consequences. Export restrictions on China have driven the country to focus on self-reliance, supported by strong government backing. Chinese companies like SMIC have made significant strides in semiconductor manufacturing, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and telecommunications, benefiting from massive funding and state-driven strategies. Furthermore, China has strengthened its ties with non-U.S. tech suppliers and countries less aligned with U.S. policies through initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative. This shift has reduced China's reliance on U.S. technology while expanding its supply chains. As a result, major U.S. tech companies, such as NVIDIA, AMD, and Lam Research, have faced considerable pressure, with their revenues dropping due to limited access to the Chinese market. Meanwhile, China has launched advanced technology products, including Huawei's AI chips and smartphones, showing increased competitiveness in the tech sector. Although U.S. export restrictions are intended to limit China's technological power, they have caused significant losses for U.S. companies, diminishing global competitiveness and leading to long-term economic consequences for the U.S. China's domestic innovation initiatives, driven by government programs and global collaborations, have resulted in impressive advancements across various industries. The U.S. China trade war, which began during President Donald Trump's first term, created significant tensions in their economic relationship. It started in 2018 when the Trump administration invoked Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974, accusing China of intellectual property theft, forced technology transfers, and unfair trade practices. Another contributing factor was the U.S. trade deficit with China, which surpassed $375 billion in 2017, seen by Washington as a severe imbalance. The first round of tariffs was implemented in July 2018, targeting $34 billion worth of Chinese exports, including machinery, electronics, and industrial products. China retaliated immediately by imposing tariffs on key U.S. agricultural products like soybeans and pork. By the end of 2019, the U.S. had expanded tariffs to cover $550 billion worth of Chinese imports, including consumer goods such as electronics, textiles, and toys. In turn, China imposed tariffs on $85 billion worth of U.S. exports. These tariffs not only disrupted trade, but also raised costs for U.S. companies, passing the burden onto consumers through higher prices. The retaliatory tariffs particularly hurt U.S. soybean producers, as exports to China plummeted. To support farmers, the U.S. government provided over $28 billion in subsidies between 2018 and 2020, though American households and businesses still felt a significant impact. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York estimated in 2019 that these tariffs cost the average U.S. household $831 per year. China's exports to the U.S. in sectors such as machinery and electronics also declined, prompting the country to diversify its export markets and boost domestic consumption. After 2 years of trade tensions, the U.S. and China reached a Phase 1 trade agreement in January 2020. Under this agreement, China committed to purchasing an additional $200 billion worth of U.S. goods and services compared to 2017 levels, with a focus on agricultural products, energy, and manufactured goods. China also pledged to address intellectual property and technology transfer issues, and in return, the U.S. paused tariff hikes and reduced some existing tariffs. However, the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted trade, and by the end of 2021, China had only met 60% of its purchase commitments. The agreement also highlighted broader issues such as state subsidies and industrial strategy. The trade war had wide-reaching effects on global supply chains, prompting companies to explore alternative sources in countries like Vietnam, India, and Mexico. At the same time, the economic decoupling between the two nations accelerated, with China focusing on self-reliance in critical industries like semiconductors. The United States aimed to boost domestic production of strategic goods during the trade war, although it did not significantly reduce the trade deficit. However, it marked a turning point in U.S.-China relations, exposing deep strategic tensions that continue to influence bilateral policies and global economic trends. Under President Trump's leadership, the U.S. maintained a hardline approach toward China, making the economic relationship between the two nations increasingly complex. As tensions escalated, the Chinese government implemented a full ban on exporting essential resources to the U.S., including rare earth elements critical for electronics, electric vehicles, and advanced weaponry. These restrictions targeted resources such as gallium, germanium, antimony, and superhard compounds, which are indispensable in the production of semiconductors, satellites, and night vision systems. China also imposed tighter controls on graphite exports, emphasizing its dominance, controlling over 70% of global rare earth element production. By leveraging this strong market position, China utilized the ban as a strategic bargaining tool. This move is expected to have profound implications, not only on U.S. industries but globally, disrupting supply chains and pushing up prices for rare earth elements. American industries such as aerospace, clean energy, and defense are scrambling to secure alternative suppliers, but are facing limited success. This highlights the risks of relying on a single major supplier and prompts the U.S. and its allies to reconsider their strategies. Some countries may align with the U.S., while others may strengthen ties with China to avoid getting caught in trade conflicts. This fragmentation of global trade undermines U.S. influence and destabilizes alliances. China has successfully exploited its strategic advantage over critical resources, showing its capacity to respond to U.S. policies. The ban serves as both a defensive measure and a way to reinforce China's position in international negotiations, signaling its readiness to escalate tensions further if necessary. This presents new challenges for U.S. economic and foreign policy. In this context, the U.S. hardline stance, including actions like raising import tariffs, could worsen the situation. American businesses relying on Chinese supplies face rising costs, which could lead to job losses and slowed growth, undermining efforts to boost domestic manufacturing and protect jobs. In a related development, President-elect Donald Trump issued a stern warning to the Brics nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, against developing a common currency to rival the U.S. dollar. Trump threatened to impose a 100% tariff on these nations if they proceeded, emphasizing that any challenge to the dollar's global dominance would result in severe economic consequences, including restricted access to U.S. markets. China, as a leading member of Brics, has been actively promoting the internationalization of the yuan to reduce reliance on the U.S. dollar. This includes bilateral currency swap agreements, encouraging Middle Eastern oil exporters to transact in yuan, and facilitating cross-border trade. China's efforts also extend to the Shanghai-based New Development Bank, NDB, which finances infrastructure and sustainable growth projects, reinforcing its push for financial autonomy and reshaping the global economic order. China's initiatives to reduce reliance on the U.S. dollar and promote local currencies among Brics nations underscore its broader strategy to enhance its global financial standing. However, Washington perceives these efforts as a threat to the dollar's dominance and has responded with economic measures, including tariffs. This rising tension between the U.S. and Brics nations highlights the complexities of blending economic tactics with geopolitical strategies in today's global markets. Russia, like China, is pursuing a de-dollarization strategy by expanding the use of rubles and non-dollar currencies, particularly in trade with China and other Brics members. In December 2023, Russia and Iran agreed to conduct trade using their local currencies, the ruble and rial, rather than the U.S. dollar, further reducing dependence on the dollar. In a broader effort to promote local currencies, Iran and the Russia-led Eurasian Economic Union, EAEU, signed a free trade agreement in December 2023, eliminating 90% of tariffs on goods exchanged between Iran and EAEU members. This enhances Iran's role in regional economic structures and reduces its reliance on Western financial institutions. India and South Africa are also exploring the use of local currencies in trade to reduce dollar-related volatility and strengthen financial autonomy in line with Brics goals. China has also retaliated against U.S. efforts to restrict its access to technology by limiting exports of strategic materials, such as rare earth elements. This highlights China's ability to leverage economic tools in response to Washington's actions, further escalating the trade war. As tensions rise, U.S. businesses face higher costs, and global supply chains continue to be disrupted. With Donald Trump set to take office and promising to intensify measures against China, trade tensions are expected to escalate further, deepening conflicts between the two nations. If unresolved, this trade war could lead to an era of economic decoupling, weakening international alliances, and stalling growth on both sides. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this content and want to learn more, Please like the video and subscribe to the Ancient Craft channel for updates on the latest videos. Don't forget to share your thoughts below so we can discuss further. See you on the next exploration journey.